Hamilon. Tokia kulupuo kamapona. Mi mun kekan-san. Liwilipana e sona pinasin kulupu. Hey everyone, I'm Greg Dan3, and today I'd like to talk about community. And the thing I'd like to talk about is how we go on to speak more Toki Pona together. Because a lot of people have thought about this. Like, how do we speak more Toki Pona together? How do we find conversations? How do we build communities? And I think we can just go ahead and get into it. So, use English, speak Toki Pona. For starters, stop speaking English. Things were not supposed to be given words. Tens of thousands of proper nouns, yet no real word use has been found for the word anti-disestablishmentarianism. And you wanted to use jargon anyway for a laugh? We had a tool for that. It was called description. Colorless green ideas sleep furiously. These are statements dreamed up by the utterly deranged. Look at what real English speakers have been demanding your respect for. This is real English done by real English speakers. Look, what even is this? What are you talking about? Oh my God, what is that? Who even is this guy? Oh, no. I don't even want to see that. Get that off my screen. Get it off my screen. They have played us for absolute fools. Absolute fools. Okay, that was the bit. But obviously it's a lot more subtle than that. So here's the serious part of the talk. Here's the reality, right? There is a lot of English in the Toki Pona community, but I mean, obviously, there's plenty of Toki Pona as well. Plenty of people who usually speak English will happily speak Toki Pona if prompted to, or if given the opportunity. There are tons and tons of learners in the community, and there probably always will be. And we already know that just telling people to stop speaking English doesn't really work. But we also know that telling people to stop speaking Toki Pona doesn't really, telling people to speak Toki Pona doesn't really work either. Really, people need a reason, some sort of prompt or some sort of opportunity that causes them to stop speaking English and to start speaking Toki Pona. That's the core idea here. So, what do? How do we get from here to speaking more Toki Pona? This has a disclaimer to it, which I'll put up front. Here it is. I am going to be making a fair number of claims and then later recommendations, which are based on my observations, my experience with the community, the conversations I've had with lots of others thinking about these problems, and honestly, vibes. I believe most others will agree with my observations and my recommendations, but if there's something you disagree with, I would genuinely love to talk about it. I think about this type of thing quite a lot. It is on my mind a lot. We'll continue. I'll make my points. Okay. So first problem, and I should probably contextualize this a bit. This is the why don't we speak more Toki Pona explanation. First is that learners have a hard time finding spaces to practice. Like at the very base level, it's actually kind of hard for learners to find spaces to practice. And I'll go through all the problems and then we'll expand on each of them. So next, learners have a hard time making friends to practice with. Third, everyone, really, like not literally, but pretty much everyone has a hard time finding things to talk about. Fourth, there aren't many opportunities to speak Toki Pona at an advanced level. And then fifth, the collective skill of the community isn't there yet. And this last one is really, really important. So I will be harping on that one quite a bit. It's kind of also kind of high concept to get at. So if you'll bear with me, you'll also notice that each of these problems build up to the next one. Like these are like the base level, how do people get into the community, all the way to like, what is the community currently? What does it look like? How did we get there? So learners have a hard time finding spaces to practice. Why? Well, Kamasona is great for questions and practice exercises, but it has pretty limited Toki Pona conversation. There's, I think, one channel in there that is dedicated to Toki Pona Taso, and then a general chat that speaks Toki Pona once in a while. But for the most part, it's English conversation and English questions and answers. Now, it's designed for that. That's fine. But nonetheless, that's the status quo. That's where we are now. Next, Mapona has great spaces for conversation and lots of different topics, but the spaces most people know best are very, very busy, and they are especially busy with English. Again, this is the problem we're thinking about and trying to address. Reddit, because we're thinking outside just Discord, Reddit is great for sharing content, but not really very good for conversation. And then most other spaces are not really well known. They're not active enough. They lack things to talk about, or maybe they even lack skilled speakers. And this applies even to spaces within Mapona and Kamasona. So what do? We should help grow those spaces where learners practice. We're building from the ground up. And there's lots of little parts to this that I've written out here. I'll move quickly through this. But first, we should be raising awareness of the smaller spaces where Toki Pona is spoken. There's like the Toki Pona Taso channel in Mapona. There's lots of little themed channels like the Soeli and Kasi Toki Pona Taso channel. There's the Caesar writing system, the Cita Limporta writing system that's built into the private use area of Unicode and all that. We'll get to it. We'll get to it eventually, like 2 hours from now. There's Mamoon. There's voice chats everywhere. There's Telegram, which has a surprising amount of Toki Pona, but also it's kind of messy, so I don't blame you for not going there. There's the Toki Pona VR meetups. Wonder why I haven't plugged that. And this is not the end of the list. This is just like the things that came to mind immediately. So please, by all means, help me make a longer list here. Next thing, we should participate more in Toki Pona Taso learner spaces. And when I say that, I mean like more of our skilled speakers should seek out these spaces and help them to have more conversation, help them to have more to talk about. And there are at least 2 of those that are pretty notable and pretty widely trafficked, or highly trafficked as well. There's Mapona with its practice channel in Toki Pona Taso, and there's Kamasona with its Toki Pona only channel. All right, and then next, we should encourage Toki Pona Taso where English is common, but we really, really should not demolish those spaces. Because again, people won't stop speaking English. What they'll do instead is just leave. That's not great either. Okay, so how do we encourage Toki Pona Taso where English is already common? Well, we can extend Mapona's Tempo Pi Toki Pona Taso events. In fact, we've had success with that on accident at least once before. We could add Toki Pona Taso events to parts of Kamasona. We could try playing games together more often. Like, there's a dedicated ping roll in Mapona for like Gartic Phone and other writing games, but we don't use it all that often. Like, there's tons of opportunities, just little opportunities for things we know people already enjoy. So more on that later. Next point. Learners have a hard time making friends to talk with. This is an interesting one, and it starts here. So when learners show up in established spaces and in established communities, they have a hard time getting into the existing friend groups or even breaking into conversations. Oh, I got a quick question here. Let me step back really quick. Somebody asked, how did that happen on accident? Referring to Mapona's Tempo Pi Toki Pona Taso, we accidentally extended it. It was the April Fool's event. We extended the event from like a couple days prior we extended the Toki Pona Taso event until the April Fool's event began, and people just went with it. It was actually awesome. Lovely stuff. All right, back to where I was. Learners have trouble breaking into conversations in friend groups. Next, a lot of learners do go out of their way to try to speak Toki Pona, but they don't always know what to talk about, so they don't have much way to connect with others. Like, this is I think, a common problem, and it'll come up again later in this talk, but like, genuinely, people just show up, they say, Toki. Somebody else says, Toki, sina seme. Maybe a third person shows up and says, mi pona, sina pilin seme. And, we talked about this type of conversation before. It's hard. It's sincerely hard to go into a random Discord channel and be like, yeah, let's just have a conversation. Like, it doesn't work that way. You have to have something there to talk about. So here's the really big one with this bullet point. The excitement and the intrinsic motivation that comes with discovering Toki Pona and starting to learn it only lasts so long. The people who stick around are mostly the ones who found another motivation, like friends to hang out with and art to make, right? But a lot of times you'll have people who like show up, they get really, really excited about the idea of Toki Pona. They learn most of the words, they learn some of the grammar. Maybe they have a conversation or two that's really straightforward and basic, or maybe they hang around in Kamasona and ask questions for a while longer. But at some point, either they find people to hang out with, they find another motivation to keep spending time in Toki Pona, or they fall off. And, that just happens. But the point of this talk is thinking about, like, how do we connect to those people? So, what should we do? Well, we do try to connect to those others, especially learners. We can be ambassadors and mentors. Now, I'm using big fancy words here, but like, really, if you see a learner struggling, you don't just teach them, because we can teach them Toki Pona. We already do that. We do a phenomenal job of teaching Toki Pona, but that's only the start of the learner journey. We should guide them to the spaces where they can practice and make friends, and even further beyond, encourage them once they get there, help them out further. Maybe like just adopt your local Yansin and help them figure out their way through this community. Because honestly, it's kind of complex and I don't know how much more we can fix by fiddling with Discord's channels. Seriously, help people through all of the learner journey, not just the start. Continuing, extend invitations to others. Like we all spend time in different ways throughout this community, and a lot of people don't know about all these different spaces that any of us spend time in. If you think there's somebody who would be interested, invite them, especially to events or games or hangouts. And the thing I want to really focus on here is that idea of reaching out to somebody. You think of them, you think, oh, I remember them. They might like this. I'll send them a quick message. Be like, hey, check this out. It really does make all the difference in the world that you think of someone, you reach out, you say hi, and you try to connect with their interests. Like, that's basically the idea. Okay, and then the last one is, while you're thinking about this yourself, while you're going about helping people, especially to figure out how to get into the community, you should be open to interests outside of your own. It's very, very easy to stay comfortable with what you already enjoy, but so many people have cool things to talk about if you ask, or could be a huge help to any sort of initiative. Be curious. And yeah, I'll be totally fair. That's a hard thing. It's sincerely hard to just make yourself be interested. But I think you might be surprised if you give it a try by how many people you can connect with just by being a little bit more open to it. This is, not something we can change per se, but something we can think about within ourselves. So continuing. Everyone has a hard time finding things to talk about. So, Toki Pona is a language. Applause. And Discord is a bunch of spaces. It's a space. But these two things, a language and a space, they're both mediums of conversation. They are not the conversation itself. Like, there's only so much talking about Toki Pona that we can do before it honestly gets kind of boring. And that's just the reality. Like, plenty of people, they hop in because they love teaching. They teach for a while. They realize that they are kind of satisfied with the things they know. And they drop off. Toki Pona and Discord, they're not conversations themselves. And then not every topic is interesting to every person. There's plenty of conversations that happen all over the community, but that doesn't mean everyone is interested in those topics. And then maybe not everyone is around when the topics they care about are being discussed. Maybe they don't even know where to talk about the topics they care about. So what do we do about that? We should find more things to talk about. Yeah, like it's that easy, right? We can run more events though. Like plainly, conversation happens when people gather for common reasons, and events can be that reason, right? We should play more games together. I mentioned this before, but like, yeah, everyone here is of course a huge gamer, and games are already fun on top of the opportunity they offer to practice and spend time together. And then you should share your favorite spaces with others. Like, there is a sincere and emotional difference between here's a list, like I talked about before, raising awareness, and then the thoughtful recommendation, right? If you think someone would love a certain space or event, sincerely just recommend it to them. More generally, just keep others' interests in mind and help them explore those interests. Show people that you care about them, even if it's just in a little way, like, oh, I thought of you, here's this. And the idea of all of these things is that they build toward just a general, like more opportunities, more topics of conversation, more availability of people to speak with collectively. So continuing. There aren't many opportunities to speak Toki Pona at an advanced level. I think this is the most common complaint I hear personally, as far as like people who have been in the community for a very long time, who are personally very, very skilled and really, really want to just continuously speak nothing but Toki Pona. And don't get me wrong, I have immense respect for that. But the reality is there's not very many times and places to do that. Like for starters, learners are the majority of the community. And so a lot of the community's current norms, social practices, and its overall design is dedicated to learners. Literally, even this talk. There are also a fair number of events which are focused on and encourage using Toki Pona, but not that much that encourages like casual use of Toki Pona. Like if I randomly hop into like a channel on Discord, odds are it's probably going to be in English because there's not really anything pushing them to casually speak Toki Pona. Now, Tempo pi Toki Pona Taso in Mapona does encourage that, and it does a pretty good job of that, all things considered. But it still is true that a lot of the rest of the time, 27, 28 days out of the month, is not really much pushing people to speak Toki Pona. And then, so even for the opportunities we do have to speak Toki Pona at the advanced level we want, we may not be getting the word out well enough, or maybe those opportunities aren't interesting to enough Toki Pona speakers. Like, think of it this way. If there were just more people in the community in the first place, there would also be, broadly speaking, more events happening in the community. Like, if we just have more people thinking about this and wanting things out of this community, they'll eventually step up and make those things. I got a question. Sonia said, why is Tempo pi Toki Pona Taso not more often? The short answer is that when we set it up like 3 years ago, I think, something like that, the ideal that was pushed for like when to time it was during full moons and new moons. And those happen, of course, approximately 2 times a month, sometimes 3. So it's just a historical thing. Like we chose to have it at those times. We could, without too much issue, push it to like every other Saturday or like odd numbered Saturdays, or that's basically the same thing, or, like random days of the week. We could do more with that. Follow-up question. If the goal is more Toki Pona Taso, why not 24/7? So the talk does cover that a bit, but I don't think that shift can happen overnight. If we just switch straight to Toki Pona Tasso immediately, we will shove people out of the community. Like, it seems like that would be a good thing to do in the sense that it would create more opportunities for Toki Pona Tasso now. And it would do that. But it would also shrink the future size of the community. Like, if we have 10,000 people right now, and actually, that's a little bit more for me to get into without slides, but it would ultimately provide fewer opportunities to speak Toki Pona in the future. And I can talk about that more later on. Okay, moving on. What do we do about having few opportunities to speak Toki Pona at an advanced level? Well, we should run more events. Hey, wait, this is the same slide from before. And that would be because pretty much the same recommendations apply. Like, if we want to have more advanced Toki Pona, we should be intentionally crafting the times and places where we do that. That doesn't mean we should break down the spaces that already exist, but we should build new spaces and encourage the spaces that already exist. That is the core idea here. Okay, here's the big one. The collective skill of the community is not there yet. That is a pretty big deal. So the Toki Pona community is very, very young. Like, almost all Toki Pona ever spoken was in the past 5 years. And for comparison, obviously there's Esperanto. It has over a century of media and literature, and obviously way more speakers who are, on average, way more skilled. That's just a math problem. Like, the reality is we are not collectively skilled to make this up. And just so we're clear, here's the top couple of words punched into Ilomuni, the top couple of words by like their frequency, punched into Ilomuni, shown cumulatively all time. And you can just see, like, 2017, 2003 to 2017, almost nothing by comparison. Like, these peak at a couple thousand. And then 2019, we're getting there. And then in 2021, wow, what happened? And then today, well, okay, a little over a year ago now, but, you know, what happened here? But this means that most of the people in the community are also new to Toki Pona. Just as a matter of fact, we can't get around that fact if we want to have more advanced Toki Pona speaking overall. We have to consider this when we think about how we grow the community and how we create more opportunities to speak Toki Pona. And just so we're clear, we do see more skilled speakers over time. But right now, it's still not enough that we have consistent use of Toki Pona outside of organized events. So continuing, what should we do about this idea, about this problem where there's just not enough time has passed with all the people being skilled already? We should be patient. There's basically nothing we can do that's going to make a visible change a day from now, or a week, or a month from now, and even a year from now. We probably won't know the impact of each little change, even if we can see the collective outcome. So we just need to be patient and be honest with ourselves that this is going to take a while. Somebody said, we're really a skill issue. I'm sorry. We're a skill issue collectively. It's me too. Okay, but what else should we do? We should be excited. Even if we made no changes to how things work today, the community is still growing quickly, and there will still be even more opportunities to speak Toki Pona in the future than there are today. Like, it's a growing community. I touched on this a little bit at the start when I mentioned, like, we're more learners than we are skilled speakers. And that's probably always going to be the case because there's probably always going to be more people coming into the community than, frankly, the total number of people who can competently speak Toki Pona. Like, it's just hard. It's hard to manage this sort of thing. And don't worry, we're almost ready here. Last thing is be curious. It will take a long time. I say in May, but it will take a long time to grow Toki Pona like many of us want. But there are still lovely people here right now who already speak Toki Pona or are learning it. And if you don't already know that person, try saying hi, reach out to people, connect to people, right? And there's no way for me to push a button that says, make the people talk more. But at the very least, I can encourage you to think about who you talk to think about who you want to talk to, about the conversations you want to have, and not just wait for those things, but to reach out for those things. Find the people who want to have those conversations and have them. All right, almost done here. So the title of this presentation has a purpose. Here's the kind of tagline, the thing that ties all this together. I think the best way for us to move forward right now is to use English as a tool to teach, raise awareness, organize events, get people excited, and overall create our own opportunities to speak Toki Pona. And if we do that right, the future community will be more than skilled enough to consistently speak Toki Pona, just like in the Esperanto community. All right, I haven't been too long, didn't read here. I will just send over the slides after the fact because I don't want to dig into this necessarily. This is just a big summary of everything I said. But I would like to use my last couple of minutes to answer questions people had. So there was one question I saw from Sonia, I believe, that was like, is this just purely a demographics problem? Is it really just 98% learners and 2% experts? So the answer is yes and no. I really wanted to work a graph into this that kind of gets at the idea a little better. I'm not sure how to describe this with language alone, but the idea is as there are more people in the community, yes, there will be more learners, but there will also be a larger number of skilled speakers over time, right? That's just the natural flow we've already seen. And we know that works, that people will grow into and learn Toki Pona, that the community will ultimately be larger one day, as long as we don't, blow it up. Let's probably not do that. Let's imagine 10 years from now that there's 50,000 people who know about Toki Pona, just as a random number I throw out. If we say that approximately 10% of the community today knows Toki Pona and 10% of that community knows Toki Pona, well, that's 15,000 right now. That's 1,500 people who know Toki Pona now and 5,000 people who know Toki Pona then, right? And 5,000 people who you have opportunities to speak with, who populate these communities, who want to do things with each other and run these events, that's a lot more opportunities to participate in Toki Pona. So yes, we have a demographics problem in the sense that there are way more learners than skilled speakers, but the skilled speakers can still hang out with one another and spend time together. And helping the learners means there will be more skilled speakers in the future. So basically, the crux of my talk is how to help the learners better. Somebody said, I know I'll miss the days of a small community. So I think that is a little bit more complex. Personally, I think that while the Toki Pona community will be ultimately very, very large, it also has a tendency to break up into little pieces, all these little friend groups, all these different purpose servers, with different topics of conversation they focus on. We're probably still going to see plenty of smaller communities within the larger Toki Pona community. And yeah, Sonia's talking about that right now as well. So I don't think the small community vibe will be gone. I think it will be different, basically. It's going to be in different spaces. It's going to be in different times. Going to be available to different people, and with different people participating. But it's not going to be gone by any means. Were there any more questions? Actually, there's a fair number of questions about where to find these spaces, where to participate in skilled Toki Pona, Waso Kelly has been a big proponent for Toki Pona VR, and I completely agree because I love that space. It is the next closest thing to meetups IRL. I can actually see what people are doing and speak to them just about as live as I could in person. And the only limitation is the times we have to actually meet up together. It works really, really well. But like that doesn't work for everyone because not everyone can like hop into VR chat. How do you factor IRL meetup organization into this philosophy? That's actually an interesting question. My personal thought is that it works basically the same way as community building online. That is to say, or rather, I should say this community, building this community. It'll work basically the same way. So if we just have a larger volume of people who are interested in Toki Pona, we will eventually have a larger volume of people who are interested in Toki Pona who will want to make more IRL meetups, right? And I guess on that note, I should probably shout out. In fact, let me hop to the last slide. I'm gonna pop open WPlace. And let's see if it loads. And let's see if it can take me to where I live. Hello. And yes, I do not mind mildly doxing myself. It's fine. Because my city is already available online. Hello. Oh my goodness, there's so much more than there was like a week ago. Hello. This right here. This is the work of Yan Yami, who has assembled a big ad for Toki Pona. It's basically an ad. I'm not gonna lie, but like little things like this that reach out beyond the people who we're already connected to, that help us find one another. It really, really does help. Like I found some people who live in my same city and started hanging out with them and speaking Toki Pona with them because I wrote the Toki Pona symbol on a sidewalk. And then one of my friends was like, hey, there's this person trying to find you. And that turned out to be somebody who I was already hanging out with in VR chat. This particular sign has led to, in just the past 24 hours, 3 different people who I didn't even know were nearby joining the local Discord server so that they can like participate in meetups in the future. Like I cannot overstate the effectiveness of just reaching out to people. And okay, at some point it does feel a little hokey and a little almost fake to like constantly be pushing Toki Pona. I want to stress that you should only do this like to the extent that you feel comfortable with. You should think about who you want to spend time with and think about how the actions you take lead to who you will spend time with. So that's the talk. Short version, help the learners out. Try, like, think about how to connect with one another and really think about the types of events you want to see in the future and help those things come to be, help those things exist. And that is all I had. I cannot wait to disappoint you with the summary of the Unicode if it happens in like an hour from now, because I have not had time to work on those slides. So they're going to be bare bones. Love it. It's okay. That one's not too much to talk about anyway. So I'll probably find room for questions instead. All right. I believe that is my time. In fact, I'm 5 minutes over. Whoopsies. Signing off.